My name's Tim, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. The first time I gave my story, there was about 5 minutes left in the meeting, and I think I was just getting into second grade. So for your sanity, I've got this, and I've got this. Thanks for letting me do this. I really appreciate it. This might be a little bit different. And getting up in front of people, you overthink things a little bit, but would you all mind if I said a quick prayer before I started?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Lord, please be with us today and bless all these people that are all here and working hard to get their life on track and working hard to stay clean and sober. And all I ask is that help me share honestly and not get too long-winded and just to maybe in some way be of service to anybody who may be in need. Thank you. Amen.
Thanks.
So it's kind of hard to imagine being in inpatient treatment for drugs and alcohol. For a lot of you, probably isn't. For me, it was, real hard. I found myself in treatment for the first time at the age of 14. And like I said, for a lot of us, it's not that hard to imagine. The truth is, once I started using at the age of 12, it only took me a few short years to get to that miserable and hopeless state that it takes some people years to get to. But it happened pretty quick for me. And very soon after I started using at that young age, I got to that point where I simply wanted to be either high or dead. If you're in here, you know that addiction and alcoholism, there's no age requirements. It has no scruples. But I think it didn't take me long to find myself there, because I think I was an addict long before I popped my first pill, and an alcoholic long before I ever took my first drink. And I can't say that's true of anybody else. And this whole thing, I'm talking about just my experience. And make no mistake, I'm not a doctor, but I can share my experience, strength, faith, and hope. And where that might not be the case for a lot of people, some of you it might hit right home. But I believe for me, being an addict is a direct result of what I call my internal operating system. And while I have to admit, it took over. I don't think my addictions are what initially created my addictive wiring. Drugs and alcohol were, and still are, merely the screwed up, destructive, and for many oftentimes deadly results. The very ones I sought because of my wiring. And for me, they were brought on by a few different things. The horrific events of my violent and alcoholic father while growing up, mass quantities of fear, resentment, and a low self-esteem that, of course, was disguised with a massively huge ego. Not to mention the fact that whole heredity thing, I'm all over that. My family has such a long line of alcoholism from both sides. So what booze did for me and what drugs did for me, it enabled me to kind of shut down what I call the committee. I have this thing in my head, and if you talk to a normal person and tell them about your committee, they think you're insane. I think a lot of people in here know what the committee is. I get those overwhelming voices. I would get those voices in my head, the ones that constantly tell you you're not good enough, you're ugly, what a piece of crap you are, or how you'll never amount to anything, and sometimes how you're not forgiven for the things we've done in our past. But the thing for me is what made the committee really bad is that since it's coming from here, that committee knows my deepest and darkest secrets. It knows everything about me because it's coming from here. And even if there's no basis in fact, I know it scares me. And man, it would just wrap itself around that stuff. And I don't care who you are, if you have the ramblings of your committee, And I don't care how tough you are, sooner or later you're going to find yourself in the fetal position, cowering in the corner. And that's what happened to me. And whenever I would take one drink, it'd shut up. One drink, and I could shut down the committee. But the thing is for me, being an alcoholic, one's too much and 1,000's never enough. So I'm not just shutting down the committee, I'm getting wasted every day to try to just feel like a normal person. And the thing is like, still, it's like that. It didn't go away when I came into recovery. The committee didn't go, hey, see you later, you know. It's still here. It will always, it's how I'm wired. It's the wiring that makes me an addict. It's the wiring that makes me an alcoholic. It's the wiring that got my best thinking into these rooms, which I thank God I drop to my knees every day for AA. But the funny thing is like, I believe that there's no mistake in God's world. And I believe God created me that for a reason. I don't think I'm a defect, even though my wiring's not quite right. I think there's a reason for everything. I think that wiring's not only important, it's what keeps me clean. It's what leads me to places where I'm capable of helping other alcoholics and other addicts now. But I know one of the greatest gifts I've got from this program is that I know that the way I think is wrong. It's a misconception. And this prayer right here packs such a huge wallop when you really look at it and break it down. You know, God grants me the wisdom to know the difference from the lies I tell myself, like the ones that tell me I can do this alone, or that God loves everybody but for some reason hates my guts, or that I can handle just a little, just this once, you know. Because if you're a real addict or a real alcoholic, there is no moderation. There's only the insanity of thinking that there is. And I have plenty of that. I have plenty of that insanity. And I don't care who you are, but if something brought you to these rooms and you're battling addiction, the thought of just a little, just this once, is something we all understand. And it's something that's also a great big lie. And I wish I could say that after I went to treatment for the first time at 14, that I graduated from the top of my cocaine class and went on to a fabulous life of rainbows and unicorns. I don't even have to tell you that's not what happened. And sometimes it's hard to remember the turbulence that's going on in your head when you're 14 years old. It's hard for me sometimes to remember what was going on last week, you know. But I know one thing. I remember one thing. And I knew one thing at 14. And that was that I knew it all. And because I had about 45 days of inpatient treatment, you know, I kind of considered myself cured. And, you know, when I got out, that was just the start. That was the beginning. And the next 13 years was a constant uphill battle. And it never got better. It never got easier. And it never just evened out. It got worse and worse as my disease progressed. And it's funny because I kept growing on the outside, but I stopped growing on the inside, except for my addictions. My addictions kept getting stronger and bigger. And, you know, as I got older, I'm just this big man baby that's getting really good at manipulation and getting what I want for the purpose of my disease. And, you know, you guys have all heard the phrase, you know, while we're in here, our disease is out in the parking lot doing push-ups. You know, we've heard that. And obviously, that it's stuff we hear a lot. If you're unfamiliar with the term, which I doubt you are, it means that our disease to this day is constantly progressing and constantly getting stronger. Even while we're in here, it's there. And you know, I always thought the push-up phrase was kind of a gentle saying, because my head is cunning, my disease is cunning, and I always like the spider metaphor a little bit better. It's a little bit more graphic for me, where you see the giant spider web, and you're on the path, and it's a nice garden, and you're walking down the path, and you just see this glorious web, and you start straying from the path because you want to go up and tug on that thing. You want to go F with it, you know. And you don't even notice what's in the center of it. That thing that's going to rip your face off. But you get up there, you know, and then as soon as you get right up to it, you start tugging on it, because that's what I do. No, this isn't good for me. This is bad for me. Let me at it. And then as soon as you start doing that, bam, it's too late. And then you find yourself, if you're lucky, you find yourself back here, if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, you find yourself in jail, or you don't make it, or you hurt yourself, or you hurt somebody else. And, you know, that's a good analogy for me, because a few push-ups out in the parking lot, big giant spider ripping my face off, that scares me. That's a little bit more. But as I was growing up, and even after treatment, it got so bad at my house because my dad, and finally, and I'm not getting too much into the details of everything, because we all have our stories, and our stories all intertwine, and we all know, if you're in here, it's not because you had a great time drinking, and a lot of times it's not because, you know, your family life growing up was all, again, rainbows and unicorns, you know. But it got so bad at home that finally the police had to be called, and my dad was hauled off in the back of a squad car. He was already on probation, so I didn't see him for a while after that. But honestly, I could have cared less. I could have cared if he lived or died. And back then, I probably would have preferred he was dead, because frankly, I got tired of trying to stop him from beating up my mom. And when I would get in the middle of that, I still have a big scar right here, you know. And when he was drunk, he was mean, bitter, and ornery. And it really made you feel like you didn't fit into his picture. You were just something that happened along his path to greatness. Whatever he was trying to accomplish, I was just something that got in the way, and he resented me for it. He resented my mom for it. He resented my brother for it. And when he would come home drunk, it was scary. I mean, it was scary. He bounced at bars till 2 a.m. He was an ex-hockey player. He liked to fight. He was mean. And that was a horrible time. And that's what, even after treatment, that's kind of what set the course. But after he left, our house became the neighborhood party spot. You know, you may remember a friend in high school, you'd go hang out at their house. Their mom doesn't care. You'd smoke dope in the house, drink beer, and that's what our house became. And my mom was pretty miserable, but she was trying to be on the rebound herself. And it was kind of weird, but at that age, it was kind of like, all right. So my mom's right there smoking dope and drinking, and I mean, I remember doing snorting lines in front of my mom, and just not caring, not putting it to. It's my mom. I'm doing all this blow in front of, and I'm thinking I'm some sort of big shot or something. I don't even know, but it was there, and it happened. And in my life, you know, I went to church when I was younger. I loved going to church. I always believed in God. I never not believed in God. I don't know why. I got even in the midst of all the turmoil in my house, I got confirmed. And it's funny, I got confirmed right at St. Luke's, you know, a mile down the road or that way. And this was before my dad left, but I would have to call people to get rides and get there somehow. But I did it, and I was always proud of that. But when this started happening, God started fizzling out. I'm a musician for a living. I've done it for a long time. And so I started getting more into music, and I started getting more into girls, more and more booze and drugs. Now that it wasn't a problem to have it at home, oh my God, I'm 16 years old, and there's a constant supply of alcohol in my house. I got friends coming over with dope. I got friends coming over with blow. And I'm in 10th grade. I got friends coming over with acid. All of that stuff, you know. I played more, and for a long time it kind of became my sanctuary. So I would hide, and I started playing even before my dad left. So I would hide in my room and just with my guitar play, and I think the fear of hiding is what motivated me to play, and I got somewhat good at a young age for being that young. Plus a little OCD doesn't hurt, you know, and oh yeah, that's all up there. And I dropped out of school at 16, and I got picked up by a local bar band. So this is Minneapolis, and this is maybe 1980, and now I'm playing in a bar band with men in their mid-20s and early 30s, and once again the door is wide open, you know. And if you got kids and you think back to when if you were doing this stuff when you were that age, and you think, you know, I got a kid in 10th grade and a kid in 5th grade, and you think, God, I'm so glad they're in school, and they're so glad they're not surrounded by it. It's so easy for me to get that stuff in high school. It was nothing, and it's still out there. But when I got into it with these guys, it was the doors were wide open. Everything blew off, you know. And it was funny because I remember telling myself, I'd gone through treatment and a little party animal, and now I'm doing this. And I remember telling myself, don't drink too much. Don't drink too much. This is cool. You're 16 or 17 years old. You're playing in a band. And my dad, who was out of the house and trying to get his life together after I dropped out, went to the school I went to, and I was on a program called STAR, which was like work program. And he talked to the principal of that program, and I actually graduated high school with like a DECA. Remember DECA work program? It's like you go to half school and then you go work for the rest of the day. So I actually graduated by playing in a band, so he gave me like a work degree kind of thing. And it was cool, and I'm like, this is cool. I'm going to graduate from school. I get to play in a band. Don't blow it. Don't blow it. Don't blow it. I blew it. You know, I was underage. And I remember going to gigs, they would draw a mustache on me with a little makeup pencil. I'd try to grow like a little Julio mustache, and they come up with a pencil and get that. And it's so stupid. I thought I was so cool. But I blew it. I started getting drunk at gigs. I started, for a kid who's 17, they're like, we can't have this. Are you kidding? We're in our 20s and 30s. If we get busted with some kid who can't handle his liquor, I don't even want to think about it. So they let me go. And that, again, kept the path going. Now I'm not gonna dwell on everything that happened to me because, like I said, we'll be here forever. And I want to get to the good stuff. And I think the good stuff is real important. And I think we hear a lot of bad stuff in stories, and we need to because we need to be reminded of what it's like. But man, I want to share the good stuff because there's a lot of people out there that's, what the hell's the good stuff? So I want to share what's happened in my life as a result of being sober. But believe me when I tell you, life before I quit didn't get better. The multiple times I tried to quit, I wound up in treatment 2 more times. In and out of these rooms, I can think of all the other rooms. In and out. My 3 DWIs didn't help. My time in jail didn't help. Car accidents, friends dying from overdoses, suicide, and AIDS didn't help. The womanizing and multiple abortions didn't help. Having no place to live didn't help. Losing the trust of friends and family members because I was a master manipulator, that didn't help. The only thing that did it for me was a hit of crack or some whiskey. And I can't even start to explain what it was like in my head, but I know a lot of you know what it's like. And I don't have to explain because it's freaking miserable. You know, and I wanted so much to quit. But after all of that, it was impossible. And every fiber of my being was surrounded by a thick coat of fear, self-loathing, and extreme resentment. I would think that God was up there getting his jollies by watching me suffer. And I never stopped believing in God. I just thought he hated me. And I hated that. I hated that for some reason God loves everybody but not me. Because of all of the crap I've done, you know, all of the BS I pulled, the manipulating, the lying, the stealing. Just, he could never love me. And he'd like to watch me suffer. That was hard. That was hard on me. And the only time I felt any relief was when some chemical would shut my brain down. And remember when I said 1 is too much and 1,000 is not enough, I would try to quit and then I couldn't. And then I'd not want to repeat the same crap I pulled, but I'd want to get out of my own head. And I just wanted to relax and be normal, so I'd have a drink. And then I'd do the same thing again, wake up the next morning, doing the same stuff that made me so fearful to begin with. And it just became this vicious cycle. And I got to tell you, I have no earthly explanation as how I survived those years. And I know a lot of you have the same thing. I saw drugs and alcohol take out people with far less of a problem than me. And I remember making fun of a friend of mine to another friend after he died. They found him in his van. He had been there for about a week and a half. And I called him a lightweight. You know, that's the state of my brain. And my consumption, my alcohol consumption, had become completely unpredictable. Meaning that due to my years of excessive drinking, my body would do different things when I drank. I'm sure a lot of you know that too. And oftentimes a very small of alcohol towards the end would get me inebriated. My hands constantly shook. And then I got to the point where I couldn't drink without blacking out anymore. While drinking, I would always made sure if I could afford it. I lived in Las Vegas playing music, so I would always make sure that I had plenty of cocaine or crank on hand, because I was terrified of going into a blackout. I was on thin ice with my job, but I couldn't stop drinking. My job was playing for Steve Wynn Properties and hotels, and I was so terrified of losing that job, but I couldn't quit drinking. So I would always make sure I had enough cocaine to keep me from getting too plastered. Now, if I couldn't afford coke, which happened a lot, I would find speed, and I'd crush it up, and I'd snort speed. And usually I'd try to find White Cross, and I was up to about 10 or 12 of those, crushing them up with a quarter and snorting them. I passed out on floors at parties of people I don't even know. I woke up in piles of dirt on hotel construction sites when I played in Vegas. I've been beat up. I've beat up others. I've begged strangers to buy me a drink. I've vomited and urinated all over myself, awake and while sleeping. I've woken up in jail and other strange places with complete strangers, and I've ended lifelong friendships with words I don't even remember saying. I've seen friends die and decay in front of my very eyes because they couldn't put it down either, because the grip's too strong. Now, I'm sure you figured out that I call my higher power God. I'm a Christian. And I gotta tell you, there's a lot of things I don't understand. I don't understand tongues, talking in tongues, and snake handling. You know, I don't understand any of that. But I can tell you that I've seen, in my years in sobriety, I've seen some pretty unexplainable miracles happen in these rooms. One miracle I was able to experience was seeing my dad change his entire life in these rooms. Even when I was still out there, he worked the program and went in and changed his life. And he became so important to me and to my life and to my recovery. And he also became one of my best friends, to the point where I couldn't see anybody else being the best man in my wedding but my dad. And I know there's a lot of people that don't get that. And one of the biggest joys of my life is knowing that I was able to have that relationship with my dad, because he was just like me. He was sick with this disease of alcoholism. So it doesn't matter if I don't understand something or not. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the strongest bases of my faith. When somebody asks me why I believe, I say I've seen too many miracles in the rooms of AA not to believe that there's something bigger and better and stronger than my disease. So when I hit my bottom, I had what a lot of us call a moment of clarity. Again, I'm pretty sure you all know what a moment of clarity is, but if you are unfamiliar with the term, it means you have a brief and extremely vivid glimpse of your life as it is, as it really is, not how you think it is, how it really is. You see how it's been, you see the people you've hurt, you see the court orders, you see the restraining orders, you see the couch or the box you're sleeping in, and you see what's coming down the road. So I believe I didn't have a moment of clarity, and I think that was my first miracle, is that I think God actually spoke to me. But then I got a pretty crazy committee, so maybe I'm just out of my mind. And he didn't talk to me with a burning bush. And it wasn't a thundering voice. And it was subtle. And it was to the point. And it was in a men's room stall, so don't discount anything. But I was there. I was at a bar, of course, and for some reason I suddenly couldn't handle my surroundings. I had no intentions on quitting. My intentions were, I've tried. I've been through treatment 3 times. I've been in and out of AA. I've been in and out of jail. Screw it. I'd go to parties and I'd walk in and say, "Hi, I'm Tim, an alcoholic." And everybody would raise their drinks and say, "Hi, Tim." I was the guy at the party who was always passed out in the corner. The one that people draw shit on your face. Make fun of you. But I'd run to the bathroom, and I don't know why, I just feel really uncomfortable at this place. And I walked into the stall, and I was, from the inside, I'm leaning up against the back door that you shut like this. And I started bawling my head off. I just started crying. And in the next few seconds, I saw everything. And I believe it was God showing me everything. I saw everything. I saw my life flash before my eyes. I saw how drugs and alcohol destroyed my family. I saw the people in my life who had died from this disease. I saw my times in jail. I saw all my shattered dreams, the restraining orders, the loneliness, the despair, the fear of living, the fear of dying, the fear of drinking, the fear of not drinking, the fear of everything. And after all those years of treatment, meetings, and failed attempts at staying clean, God showed me my past, but He showed me in a way that made everything obvious to me. But for some reason, it was always hard for me to see and hard for me to understand. And I showed me my future. And for many of us, it goes only one of 2 ways, and you know what it is, dead or in jail. I put my head, and mine was death. I wasn't going to go to jail again. And I put my head in my hand, and I just started just bawling more. And as fast as it came, it was gone. I think that whole thing took about 20 seconds tops. And maybe it was my own voice, and maybe it was all in my head. But like I said, if you believe in miracles, and I do, to this day, I believe it was God. And the proof is, 25 years later, I'm still sober. I haven't taken a drink. I haven't taken a hit. And I can honestly say that without those treatment centers and organizations like AA and a few others, I truly think, I know I'd be dead. Because even to this day, I continue to go to meetings. I'm so grateful this is there. Can you imagine if this wasn't here? Can you imagine not going to meetings? Can you imagine going to a room of people who aren't alcoholics and telling them about the crazy voices in your head? Think about that. Yeah, we'll put you in a place where there's no alcohol. We'll fix you right up. But after all of those almost 20 years of failed attempts, I believe it was God who picked me up. But He picked me up and He dropped me off at a meeting. And it was the grace and power of Christ that kept me strong in those times. That's my higher power. But He also knows we need help. And we are not, nor will we ever be, perfect beings. So just forget that nonsense right now. forget it. And forget, if anything in your head tells you can do this alone, that's a lie. You can't. You can't do this alone. And sometimes I think I can. But you know, one of the gifts I've gotten from the Serenity Prayers, when I think about the wisdom to know the difference, I think the wisdom for me is knowing that I'm lying to myself again. And that I need to get here because we can do what I can't. And again, I got, as I said earlier, I drink because of how I'm wired. I'm not wired as a result of my drinking. So what that means is you take away God, the meetings, the booze, and the drugs, I'm right back to where I started. At 13 years clean, I started to think I didn't need meetings anymore. It was what I now call the old double-digit dodge. You know, I've got double digits. I don't need to go to AA anymore. And my life became a horrible, sober mess. But what it made it so bad was the fact that I found myself not only staring back into that stupid abyss, I climbed right back in. And what's also funny is that when I finally was able to quit before, I had absolutely nothing. When I hit bottom, I made damn sure I hit hard. And that's one reason I stuck with sobriety early on. My sponsor, back when I first quit, kept reminding me that I have literally nothing to lose. The only thing I would have lost back then was my life. And at that point, it wasn't worth shit. So fast forward to 13 years later, when I start thinking I don't need meetings, now I have a wife who I met in sobriety after 4 years. I have 2 great kids. I've got a job I love, playing music. I've got bills. I've got a mortgage. I've got a great relationship with the God of my understanding. And that's when I decide I don't need to go to meetings. Because now I don't have nothing to lose, because now I have everything to lose. You know, and not only that, when you stop going to meetings, you stop helping other alcoholics. You stop helping the newcomers who need you the most. You know, and I've run into people with double digits too that think they know everything about everything. And some of them are pretty damn smart. And there's the ones that decide they don't need this program in their life because they've got into a rigmarole of simply not drinking. But I think if you want to be happy and free and have a good life, I think you need to move forward in some way, shape, or form. Because if you're just standing still, you're kind of going backwards. You know, and even in my darkest hours of drinking way back, I never remember once considering suicide to any degree. Not once. Maybe in a couple drunken blackouts I may have threatened it to somebody for attention, but I have way too chicken shit to do anything like that. But after a year of no meetings and not doing the things I needed to do, I had a complete and total meltdown. That committee was back, and it was back in full force. And now that I couldn't shut it down with a drink, I couldn't stifle it. I didn't want to go to meetings, and I didn't want to take a drink. I did not want to be alive. That was and is no way to live. My wife got to the point where she was so afraid that I was going to do something really stupid, called my sponsor, who had been my sponsor for 10 years. And he kept calling me early on, trying to get me to go to meetings, and I wouldn't go. Finally, I went to a meeting. I don't know why I didn't relapse. Lucky I didn't relapse. And I went back to AA, hoping I could get my life back on track. And honestly, I didn't think it would work. I didn't think, I thought, it works if you're a drunk, and it works if you have nothing to lose, you know? Because if your life's a mess because you drink so much, you stop drinking, pretty soon it's going to start getting better because imagine, you're not going to get, geez, I haven't gotten a DUI for 25 years. Wow. Maybe because I'm not drinking. Your life just, things happen. But you know what? It's not like that. That's what my head is telling me. AA's not going to help. That's that committee lying to my butt again. In AA, I got in and I started doing the things I needed to do again. I went through the steps through the fourth time. I reconnected with my sponsor. I started going to as many meetings as I could. And that serenity and everything came back. It took almost a year. But man, I don't want to be sober and miserable. I don't want to be sober and miserable. I want to be sober, happy, and productive. And I want to be able to be there for people who need help when they need help. Because, that's the most selfish part for me. Because when I help somebody else, I'm helping myself way more than I'm helping them. I don't tell them that. But I do, And I'm wrapping it up here. But I want to tell you a story. I met this guy who I hadn't seen since I went back to meetings. I won't tell you his name, but he was just nicest, smartest guy you'd ever meet. And he comes up to me and he goes, sort of like in church when someone says, "Hey, I haven't seen you for a while." Ding. He goes, "Well, hey Tim, I haven't seen you in the rooms for a while. How you doing?" And I look and I go, going to church and working and spending time with my family. I'm just kind of coasting along. And without missing a beat, he looks down at the shoe and he looks back up at me. He goes, "You can only coast downhill." And I just went, think about that. You can only coast downhill. That's strong, And, I just like in early sobriety, we need to cleanse, we need to keep tabs, just like newcomers. We can always feel like newcomers. There's a lot of junk that starts floating around in your head, even when you're clean for years. It's an ongoing basis. Things don't just stop and you stay the same, and because you quit drinking, you're happy, joyous, and free. We got to do the stuff we need to do because we're funky people. And, it kind of sometimes starts when, you share a lot of those things with other people. When, like when you go through the steps, when you share with your sponsor, stuff that you never ever thought you'd tell anybody. It gets it out, Or when somebody shares something with you that is like the scariest thing to them ever, and you go, "I did that." And you can just see their face, you can see the tension just go, whoop. And they go, "You did, really?" And you go, "Yeah," and you start cracking up about it. All of a sudden, that dark chasm in their mind, poof, it's gone. It's gone, If there's stuff eating at you that causes you shame, guilt, fear, anger, resentment, you need to get it out. Don't let it consume you. It's like that empty void us addicts all seem to have in our gut. Some of us call it a God-sized hole because only God can fill it. Booze, drugs, things, stuff, that can't fill it either. And I was just going to conclude with saying, after coming back from the other side, I'm lucky, I'm blessed. I like the fact that I'm still a little broken. I'm always going to be broken. I don't care. I like the fact that some parts of me need constant maintenance, need constant repair. It keeps me clean, keeps me on my toes, and it keeps me coming back. And it sure beats the hell out of the alternative. And I also love that what almost killed me now gives me the ability to help others. So for me, my life now, it's nothing short of a miracle. Thanks.
Yeah.